With so much going on in the month of March, you could be forgiven for maybe missing a few of those big celebrity real estate stories, but don't worry, that's why we are here to fill you in on all of the news that you need to know. Starting with none other than actress turned talk show host Drew Barrymore. Now, Drew has made something of an interesting decision to list her Westchester getaway for just under $5 million, just 2 years after she bought it. The actress explained that she originally bought her home in the Westchester County area because she was looking for a weekend retreat that was easier to access than the Hamptons, which can take around 3 to 4 hours to reach by car, especially on busy summer weekends. Drew found a stunning historical property much closer to her Manhattan home, which not only provided the perfect retreat, but also offered her an opportunity to exercise one of her favorite talents, DIY renovations. Drew's 6-bedroom home was originally built in the 1740s, and the actress admitted that when she bought it, she knew it was going to require some pretty significant cosmetic updates. However, she couldn't have foreseen quite the rough shape that the property was actually in. And in the end, the renovations turned out to be a complete and total gut. The work took over a year and required Drew to live in the property when it was little more than a bare shell. Although she does say that those were some of her best memories that she enjoyed in the home. Still, during the year that it took to renovate the home, Drew says that her family's needs just changed and she no longer has a use for the property. So she's put it on the market for around $600,000 more than she bought it for just 2 years ago, which, when you take into account the amount of money that she put into the so-called money pit, she's probably not going to be walking away with a huge profit. Despite Drew's decision to sell the home, she says she does have a very deep spiritual connection to the property, particularly because it provided her with a place on the East Coast where she could experience the true beauty of nature, much like she was used to doing when she was growing up in California. So, for anyone out there with $5 million to burn who's desperate for an idyllic weekend retreat, head over to Realtor.com to find all the other information you need to know about Drew's listing. And now from Westchester, we are going to shimmy down south to Florida, where billionaire Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has just dropped $170 million on a newly built mega mansion on Miami's infamous Billionaire Bunker. Now, not only is $170 million a simply mind-boggling number, it actually set a record for the most expensive residential property to ever have been purchased in Miami-Dade County. It's also one of the most expensive homes that has ever been bought in the US, although it falls about $68 million short of the official record, which is held by Zuckerberg's fellow billionaire, Ken Griffin. Now, it's going to be a little bit of time before Mark and his wife, Priscilla Chan, can actually move into the opulent abode, which sits on the waterfront and is still in the process of being built. When it's finished, however, the property is set to have almost every single amenity imaginable, from the traditional, like a gym and a waterfront swimming pool, to the slightly more luxurious. Things like a hair salon, an aquarium, even a library that has a secret passageway that leads to a room that could be used for any reason whatsoever. Our vote? Mark, we recommend you put in a speakeasy, but we'll leave that up to you. However, Mark's decision to buy a home in Florida has raised questions for another reason, namely whether the Facebook founder is planning to move his primary residence from California to the Sunshine State, thereby joining a growing list of billionaires who have fled California ahead of a potential billionaire tax that could be implemented on the state's highest net worth residents. This would see people like Mark being taxed upwards of $10 billion, provided that the ballot measure is passed. Zuckerberg is one of multiple people who have purchased homes in the Sunshine State in a bid to avoid this tax, with people like Google founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin also snapping up homes in Florida ahead of the tax's implementation. While Mark may not yet have made up his mind about whether to stay or go as far as California is concerned, one former LA resident says that he couldn't be happier with his decision to leave the Golden State, and in fact, the US in general. During a recent appearance on the Smartless podcast, Thor actor Chris Hemsworth said that it was the greatest decision he has ever made to relocate his family from Los Angeles to his native Australia, where he now resides with wife Elsa Pataki and their kids on a sprawling and stunning waterfront ranch. Chris said that he and his wife made the decision to leave LA around the same time that their sons were born in 2014, explaining that they made the decision for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, fewer shoots were actually happening in Los Angeles, which meant that he wasn't able to return home after spending a day on set. Another reason were what he described as the trappings of Los Angeles. Things like the glitz and the glamour, but also the paparazzi and the constant attention, which he said became all the more oppressive after he became a father. Then, of course, there was his desire to have a little bit more freedom, space, and proximity to the ocean, all of which were things that he knew he would be able to gain if he moved back to Australia with his family. Since moving back to Australia, Chris says that every time he returns to his family home, it feels like he's going on vacation, because it's a place where he truly feels able to relax, let loose, and not worry about the prying eyes or paparazzi who used to follow him around in LA. And of course, the fact that it feels like a vacation may have something to do with the incredibly luxurious amenities that are on offer at the property. Despite being described as a ranch or a farm, the property is not exactly the place where you're going to see Chris wrangling cattle or riding horses. It is instead a stunning, custom-built, eco-friendly sanctuary that the couple completed in 2021. It has all kinds of different features and amenities, including things like an enormous swimming pool, proximity to the ocean where Chris and his kids can surf, and a huge amount of land where they can ride motorbikes and spend time in the great outdoors. Although it's not known exactly how much the couple spent on the property, it's understood to be worth around $35 million today. Now, Chris is far from the first Hollywood star who has left LA in a bid to secure more privacy, and he probably won't be the last. However, someone who did it long before it became incredibly trendy is Daryl Hannah, whose home life has earned new attention thanks to the release of Ryan Murphy's new FX series, Love Story, John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. While the drama series centers largely on the romance between JFK Jr. and Carolyn, it does draw in a lot of history about JFK Jr.'s prior romance with Daryl, who was at the time a huge Hollywood star. Daryl has since spoken out to slam the series as both insulting and tragedy exploiting, insisting that the character portrayal of her on the screen is nothing like who she is in real life, nor does she believe that the depiction of the romance between herself and JFK Jr. is in any way authentic. In an op-ed written for the New York Times, Daryl noted that the portrayal of herself on the screen is a world away from who she really is in real life, someone who has long since given up all of the trappings of Hollywood fame in favor of pursuing a life that is dedicated to charitable works, animal conservation, and documentary filmmaking. In fact, years before Love Story even premiered, Daryl had effectively walked away from the traditional LA lifestyle that most celebrities enjoy, preferring to spend the majority of her time at a Colorado ranch that she purchased sometime in the late 90s. In 2004, she opened up about the moment that she saw the property for the first time, explaining that it was unlike anything she had ever seen, while comparing the stunning wildflower meadows that surrounded the residence to a scene out of The Wizard of Oz. She added that she was even more motivated to buy the property when she learned that the land had been earmarked for development, something that she says she couldn't allow to happen because of the devastating impact that it would have had on the wildlife. Now, Daryl does still spend time in the LA area, at a house in Malibu that she shares with her longtime boyfriend, musician Neil Young. Together, the pair travel between the ranch in Colorado, the house in Malibu, and a cottage in Canada, where they spent a large part of their time during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Moving on now to perhaps one of the most tragic celebrity news stories in the month of March, the death of Walker, Texas Ranger star Chuck Norris, who passed away near his home in Hawaii after he was suddenly hospitalized with an unknown illness. Chuck's passing at the age of 86 was announced in an Instagram post shared by his family, in which they praised him as being the heart of their unit, while asking for privacy as they navigate the circumstances surrounding his death behind closed doors. It's understood that Chuck had been spending time at his longtime vacation retreat on Kauai's North Shore, which he purchased for around $7 million back in 2015 and had long used as a getaway when he wasn't spending time at his longtime Texas ranch. The actor relocated to the Lone Star State from California in the 1990s, and he later built a sprawling custom ranch in Navasota, which served as his primary residence for the last decades of his life. Chuck, who moved around a great deal as a child, often said that the Texas property was the only place on the planet that he truly felt like he was at home, although he later expanded his portfolio to include the property in Hawaii, where he is understood to have enjoyed many a relaxing vacation along with his second wife. We will be back next month with a whole new roundup of the best and biggest celebrity movers and shakers to keep you fully entertained. But until then, don't forget to head over to the Realtor.com News and Insights section, where you can find all these kinds of stories and more to keep you occupied until then. Bye!